Hello. What you are about to watch is a recording from a live event which took place on November 6th, 2025, featuring the world pre-screening of the Rising Tide Foundation film Edgar Allan Poe's Final Mystery, A Tale of Two Murders, hosted by myself, David Goslin, and Cynthia Chung. Because we felt that the robust dialogue with the live audience after the film was of such high quality that it were wise to make this session available here on this channel, with the hope that it may inspire you to watch the full 98-minute film, which is available for viewing to all paid subscribers to our Substacks and the new streaming platform, View. Links are provided in the description box below. Each film we do is a labor of love, but it also takes money to make these things happen. And as such, we do need your help. That is why we have made this film for the next several months available uniquely on Substack and also View, which means it isn't free, but it will cost less than a cappuccino at Starbucks. So enjoy the Q&A session, and I hope you enjoy the full documentary, Edgar Allan Poe's Final Mystery. Okay. So I hope people like that little journey. Deborah says, excellent. Thank you, Deborah. So I think what we can maybe do, there's a lot. I don't know if people expected what they just got there, but there was a lot thrown at you all. Might need some time to chew on some of that. And I apologize too. I noticed that some computers might have had a little bit of a choppiness due to the Zoom intermediary, but that's the way it is. It won't be the case when we upload this and make this available on other platforms. But if we want to go for a bit of a Q&A where people can throw Dave, Cynthia, myself, any question that you have in mind, what we can do to keep things a bit orderly is to put your name in the chat box, which I have not really been looking at. I'm just going to scan through right here to see. Ginger says that I recognize the voices of Anton Chaikin and Courtney Turner. What a great presentation. Looking very much forward to listening and watching again. Thank you, Ginger. Kimberly says she never recognized them too. That's cool. And yeah, it was a little bit quieter than the others. Maybe for the final rendition, we could maybe jack up Courtney's voice just a little bit to have a similar amplitude. Yeah, I'm just scanning through right now the messages that I've seen. A lot of positive remarks. That's good. Okay. Deborah's afraid she's gonna have nightmares. Don't worry, Deborah. You won't have nightmares. It's okay. The good is more powerful than evil. All right. So overall positive. Dave, you did good, Dave. You done good.
Oh, Matt, someone's asking who is the voice for Snooky's Snobs.
Ah. That's my aunt, Linda Eritz, who pulled that incredible feat off. I don't know if she's still there. She was there at the beginning.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, creepy. Yeah, that was great, Linda.
Thank you. I was channeling,
Oh, Linda's there. Oh, wow. Shout out to Linda. I mean, you get the top prize. You get the trophy. That was the best voiceover by far.
Thank you.
Carried it.
Yeah.
Woohoo! I had a good coach.
Say hi to my coach, Mario, for me.
Oh, he's in the background. He can hear you. He's the one who coached me.
Good job.
Yeah, I was not expecting with that dark theme to bust a gut laughing in the middle, but that was exactly what the medicine needed at that moment. That was good.
That was a perfect example of comedic relief. I mean, in light of everything in the documentary, that's quintessential comedic relief right there. That was really nice.
So Jason's asking from another filmmaker. Jason Dahl is asking, David, what was it like making a movie?
Painful, very, very painful. Inspired all the way. Now I'm kind of tapped out. I'm gonna take a few days to collect myself, But yeah, like I was over at Matt and Cynthia's. I think it was yesterday. I've lost track of time, but I it's pretty much on the couch in like the same spot for 13 hours, just editing. And I did the same thing yesterday or the following day. And there's maybe a few touch ups, but I think it's nice to have something so. I mean, it's a big composition, so I guess this was a good opportunity to kind of flex some compositional muscles and try to bring something together that's big and ambitious. And like from here, it's like making anything that's an hour and under. I'll feel like sure, like it's going to be easy. At this after this, like anything an hour and under will we have a lot more, right? This is just the first test case for a whole series of films that we can do like this. I already have the Beethoven and Schiller ones, kind of the concepts, and I have all sorts of notes. And for the Beethoven one, we already have the script. This one was, Matt and Cynthia were traveling as well. We're sharing scripts. We're working on the script. I read Matt's book and I chewed over, how to bring, how to turn the book, half the book, into a film. Because we should mention that the book has a second story, which is the Jack the Ripper story. So what's done for the whole post mystery is also done for Jack the Ripper. So Matt, the research carried it. When I read the book, I was like, this is becoming a movie. This is becoming a movie. And so, yeah, that was a fun feeling, right? To go from there and already know like, okay, we're going to do this, had some concepts, had some ideas, and to just see it come together. It's like, okay, the feeling for me is like, okay, so we're not crazy. We had this idea and, it came together, this is what it turned out to be. But the germ was always there from reading it and having the initial idea. Everything else is kind of just working backwards. So that's a nice feeling, knowing that everything can, a seed can kind of grow into its own sovereign composition. And, this was done in like 8 weeks, 9 weeks. Ideally, this would have been done over 3 months, but the fact that it was done essentially in 2 months, I think is also, yeah, it was painful, but yeah, 2 months to put that all together is, I think that's pretty good. That means we can get stuff done, and to have a regular kind of showing of films like that, especially, we have a team, we have a good workflow and everything. Yeah, the possibilities become endless, and just having edifying compositions, like imagine people start with this, you get this as a history lesson, and then you go read the works of Poe. And that just makes it so obvious that we have education, like we have it asked backwards. If you had this approach, and we talked about a lot of different things, it wasn't just about Poe technically, but that's technically, if you want to understand anything, you kind of, I think it was Matt, I don't know where you got it from, but you said there's a quote, it's not how you think about any one given thing, it's how you think about everything. I think that's a good example, right? Like if you have all history, you have forensics, technically, you have, detective stuff, hypothesis formation, occult history and lore, and you can triangulate. And if you have a sense of method, you're able to deal with a lot of different subjects and triangulate on the thing that you're looking for. And so, yeah, if people saw this, imagine you see this in high school, and then you read the Poe stories. That's transformative, right? You're going to come out a very different person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I really appreciate you taking the initiative to propose this to turn this into a film, because I get a little bit sometimes down where you've got an immense amount of effort that I put in to try to piece together this explanation of what's up with these anomalies of Mary Rogers' death, of what Poe was a part of, and put it into a bigger story. And it's at the end of volume 3 of a book series, and how many people are actually reading that? And I was getting a little down, thinking, oh, nobody's going to really. Very few people are following this thread. So the ability to showcase the sequence of ideas in the story in the form of a film, done the way that you were able to pull it off, is, I think, something that's really going to accelerate people's ability to just internalize a lot of these seemingly very different things, like you were just saying. And what's so great about Poe is, or just any of these great minds, is that they're great because they're thinking in a natural human way, and they're able to tap into a certain source that doesn't differentiate some sort of a weird separation between the arts, the sciences, their political responsibilities in history, their ability to see potential and create pathways to get from situations of enslavement to situations of better liberties. So these great minds, who are often artists and really great scientists, are thinking on this incredibly powerful level that very few are really granted the ability to appreciate. And so when you get vicariously into their shoes, a lot of things come together, and all of a sudden you could talk about ancient mystery religions and witch covens and black masses of medieval Europe, and how that pertains to things that you wouldn't think are connected in any way, like developments around Aaron Burr's Freemasonic operation and the infiltration of American Freemasonry. It's like, who would have thought there was like a direct connection in that sense? And and then seeing Mary Cecilia Rogers' connection to the Mathers clan and that whole fight. It's very interesting how that works. Sorry, I'm not really paying attention. If people want to, I don't know. Is anybody? Because I see that Deborah pointed out a little typo of 1914 that was said in the script instead of 1814. It should have been probably 1814, wherever that was. And I thank you, Deborah, for noticing that. We'll fix that. There was Ginger is looking forward to bringing this into her homeschooling practice. That's very cool. Jason, you want to pose that question, dude?
Yeah, the Transcendentalists, are they the progenitors of the Transcendental Meditation movement that swept Hollywood from I don't know when it would have started, probably the 50s through to the 80s? It was huge, and and it still is. Like David Lynch, he's a big progenitor, a big proponent of that. And
yeah,
is there a connection?
There is. And it's through, it seems, the Theosophists. So in the first draft of the script, and it's developed more thoroughly in the book series, but in the first draft, we had actually included a section on Madame Blavatsky and her absorption of Ralph Waldo Emerson's philosophy, especially his concepts of the world soul, a lot of the fundamentals of his weird approach to transcendentalism, and also some of his what he appreciated in the Indian culture, which wasn't really the Indian culture. It was the Indian culture as seen through British imperial eyes that he was pulling out and trying to extract into his weird synthesis that the Theosophists were inspired by and internalized into their weird, very, very comprehensive, cosmos space opera, their creation myths that became the foundation of what really blew up in the 1960s in America, that brought in the transcendental meditation techniques. Esalen also plays a direct role in a lot of this stuff. The Beatles.
Bloody Blavatsky.
Yeah, she's everywhere.
Just never ends.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely there is a direct connection. Yeah.
Oh, we should mention as well. So this thing is going to take on a life of its own somewhat, because Poe's birthday is on January 19th, right? So the launch of this thing and, from the premiere and circulating it among the broader public eventually And then, there are celebrations of Poe's birthday technically. And now it's a bit of I'm just workshopping the idea, but there are celebrations of Poe's birthday everywhere. So getting this into the right sort of venues and circles and having showings of this film, right? We'll probably organize a public or maybe several public
we're
showings,
definitely going
right?
to do that. I mean,
There's a lot.
We're going to rent that cinema in Toronto that we screened the UFO episode 4 film. I think we'll do that again. Getting this into cinema experiences, I think is useful.
Yeah, hopefully, maybe we can spark some Poe watch parties. There's different people that I know that really like Poe, and there's different outlets. So the more we get this out, I think this thing will really start taking a life of its own. And, it could maybe become a bit of a seasonal classic, right? When it comes, that Halloween season rolls up, maybe, add a bit more of a sublime, less cartoonish touch to the whole festivities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Dan Leach, one of the voice actors that played a key role in this story, wrote positively, "Bravo, David, Cynthia, and Matt. Very thoroughly composed, researched, and poetically rendered. These films are invaluable contributions to the rescue of our civilization from the forces of darkness." Dan, coming from you, that means a lot, man. Thank you. Dan's also the guy that inspired Dave to do the Devil at Woodstock film that some of you have probably seen already. Which is
Dan's featured in that. Yeah.
Was I going to say? It should be the 1841 Credo, not 1941. Yes, Monty, thank you. Yeah, 1841 Credo. It is. That correction will be made before this goes public. We'll probably put this out on Saturday or so. Hey, Sue, I see your digital hand there.
Hi. The film is brilliant and spellbinding, and I was riveted the whole time. And I've already read the book, but it was so good to revisit it through, the film. It was just, over the top, fantastic. My question is, so looking at Mary Rogers and her connection to the Mathers, but also to the Winthrops. And, I've been trying to find my way through a lot of these great thinkers who were doing counterintelligence. They're often painted as being a part of the occult. So I was recently, I didn't look into it deeply, but John Winthrop Jr. was said to have been a follower of John Dee and reading all of John Dee's books. So, I was just wondering if you could make a comment on how you find your way through all of the misinformation out there, Matt, and how can you tell the difference between counterintelligence and
intelligence?
Intelligence, exactly. Yeah.
Actually, it's funny that you're bringing that up, because the first thing to just keep in mind, and I'm sure Dave or Cynthia could also chime in on this stuff, but is that liars lie. That's how the oligarchy works, is through it's the empire of lies. So when it comes to matters of that deal with the nature of the battlefield of the mind and how the mind moves from ignorance into truth, and what is the structure of that transformation of a state of mind that doesn't know but has a thirst to testing out thoughts that resolve paradoxes that don't work, and then finally generating thoughts that actually do harmonize and resolve paradoxes, the way Poe describes the nature of a healthy mind in his Eureka essay, or that Inspector Dupin also, it expresses quite well in his own way within the Purloined Letter. There's a structure to creative reason when it's working in a healthy way, and it's consistent across the board, independent of particular cultural, religious, linguistic qualities that might separate people and differentiate them, which is a perfectly good thing to have differentiated peoples, and you don't want one homogenous Borg. But there is something constant and universal in this quality of a creative mind and the love of truth and the humility, which is universal to the human condition if the human is working properly, right? And then when you know that the oligarchy maintains their power by obscuring, destroying that, and creating lying narratives that hurt the mind of anybody to appreciate how these thoughts, these category of thoughts shape history for the good. And so actually I'm reading right now these two books that I bought a few weeks ago, the works of John Dee, which is insane but useful, and also John Dee's America, The Idea of America Came from the Mind of John Dee, by James Allan Egan, who's an occultist, and that's the thing, is that a lot of people who try to like impose these narratives that, all of the American experiment, all of it was purely the creation of hermetic occultists and Rosicrucians, and there was never anything else but that. It doesn't mean that didn't influence the early American colonies, as we saw with the battles in Massachusetts. But it's like, what was the first major scandal when the Massachusetts Bay Colony was set up? It's like the first major scandal was the Antinomian controversy, where there was a major battle that almost undid the whole thing early on between John Winthrop Jr. and his battles with Annie Hutchison. And essentially they were effectively antinomians. There were people who believed that what the health of your soul is completely independent of the works and the acts that you do in life. They differentiated that completely. So you could be a hedonist. You could do all sorts of things in the bodily realm. It didn't matter as long as you had a sacred soul. And that just creates a weird Manichaean dualism that breaks people psychologically. But there was a huge fight, and she was a hugely influential creature with a whole network that she was being protected around. The figure of Sir Henry Vane, the governor at the time, who went on to become an infiltrator of the English Civil War. This guy was a major protector of Hutchison. And it seems like she had a witch coven. I mean, I can't find a smoking gun, but it seems like there was some actual witch covens going on there. And when she was expelled from Massachusetts Bay, she went and founded with her brother-in-law Rhode Island as the colony of Rhode Island. She founded Providence and also New Hampshire, right? So, but you have these battles going back. This is the 1630s, 1640s. So you got this rich tapestry of drama of those who represent real natural law and those who represent its perversion, battling out, and what these narrative controllers, like this guy Egan, or Nicholas, who's that MI6 guy who was teaching Candace Owens how to like reinterpret her American history. These are narrative controllers who are just trying to like destroy our ability to appreciate the battle, and instead they just make it seem as though it's all one thing, and then that just completely destroys our ability to understand anything else about the American Revolution, about the battles within Freemasonic lodges, like, or what happened. Like, you just can't understand anything at that point. So.
Right. So John Winthrop Jr. was likely, he could have been reading John Dee to understand, so that he could fight it.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. People might look at my library at some point in the future and think like, oh, this guy's really into witchcraft and magic. Like, look at all this. And Cynthia's really into like Aleister Crowley. And look, she has all of these books. But yeah, you got to know your enemy. I'm sure Poe had some crazy stuff in his library too.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Matt.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting, in The Fall of the House of Usher, Poe actually, you could see when Roderick Usher, this oligarch medievalist, representing the dying of the oligarchical paradigm, on his bookshelf are books by Robert Flood, Paracelsus, all of these alchemical wizards who most people don't know. They would hear those names, it would just bounce off. It wouldn't mean much. But if you actually know the importance of these Rosicrucians and what they did with people, representing the John Dee tradition, you're like, oh, Poe knows. He's the guy knows what he's doing, right? It's subtle, but it's loud at the same time. I'm noticing that it's very difficult for me to look at the chat section. So I like what Sue did by raising her digital hand. If other people who want to ask a question or share a thought also can just raise the digital hand because I'm losing track of things. I noticed that Betty is asking, will this be available for viewing? Yeah. Yeah, we're going to just clean it up just a tiny little bit more. And then Dave's free. He's going to be free to go on to other creative ventures. But we'll release it on probably Saturday. And it'll be for a couple of months behind a paywall. So we're going to ask people to either go to our Substacks and become a paid subscriber. So it's going to be available for all of our paid subscribers, or they can watch it also on View, a new streaming platform, which it'll be like $4 or $5 that they can like rent and watch and share it. And then we'll make it free in the new year, I'm sure. So that's just so you know. And there was another thing by Kevin Visser had a oh, there we go. Kevin said, oh no, Margaret said, a wonderful way for people of all ages to immerse themselves in learning and living life more deeply. I agree that introduction to book reading through movies like this will invigorate people's human development. Well, that's good. Thank you, Margaret. Kevin asks, how come schools and thought leaders promote people like Thoreau, Emerson, calling them great minds? Same people in charge, same psyop. Is this the same people in charge, the same psyop going on? Yeah, probably. And then Kevin writes, after reading your books, it makes it easy to see which side they are on because they always reference their thought leaders. Yeah, good point. Drew, I see your digital hand.
Hey, can you hear me?
Sure.
All right, just a quick note. Since you've covered Hubbard and Parsons and their little satanic network, when I lived in Pasadena, which was, of course, the center of eugenics research, there's an area up near Jet Propulsion Laboratory called Devil's Gate.
Oh,
If
yeah?
you've ever heard of that.
No. What's
Basically, it's a very narrow canyon that's got a rock with an outline that looks like a devil's head.
that?
And there's a dam there that Hubbard and Parson performed ceremonies.
Is that where they were doing the Mystery Babylon working to bring in like
Yeah, because it's right next to Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
really creepy?
Oh yeah, I was exploring that when I lived in Pasadena, and then unfortunately the office broke up and I had to move away. So, but I was starting to explore that and see where they did the stuff. So, but it's right there. It's an old 1920s dam. Yeah, that's where they did their things, and there's this rock there that's got this outline of a devil. So it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah, you should write something on that. I didn't even I never really looked into that too seriously. Huh.
Well, it's no mistake that Parsons set up his operation there with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, Crowley's going to come in the next film that we end up doing on, like Dave alluded to, this setting the stage for a new take on Jack the Ripper and what that was all about. That will involve Crowley, and that will involve Blavatsky, that will involve Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, that will involve Sir Charles Warren and a network that was committed to creating Zionism and rebuilding Solomon's Temple. All of that plays in a way that might surprise you.
Yep, I actually went by because the Theosophists have a 1920s kind of Art Deco building, and it's kind of like southeast of downtown Los Angeles. So it's still there, and they still hold meetings.
Yep. Jason, what's this? What's this, Jason? ChatGPT's take. What is? You asked ChatGPT, what does it think about the thesis?
Yeah. So I asked it, are you able to analyze Canadian historian Matthew Ehret's thesis on Poe? And it gave a lot more. That was just the bottom line. But a very good analysis of your thesis, actually.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah. Core claims Poe is political dissident. Eureka as philosophical manifesto. Reputation sabotage. murder hypothesis. I just put the bottom line. It kind of wraps it all up. You should do the search. It's it's great. It pulls from a lot of sources too. So there's it's not just Rising Tide. There's lots of
Wild.
other sources that it pulled from. So
Yeah.
which is good. That means, the book and the articles and
The modern,
this movie will add to the societal spread of this. So
right.
it's really cool. Yeah.
It has the approval of the modern digital gods,
Yes.
modern oracles.
I just want to frame that in that I believe AI should be outlawed and we should start the Butlerian Jihad right now. But until we outlaw it, I use it for just about everything because it's so damn fast.
Yeah, no, it's quite impressive if used with wisdom.
If it just stays, if it just keep it as really advanced algorithms like this, that's great. Just don't let it start planning things. Eyebrow goes up.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're going into Zionism next? That was my next question.
Well, it'll come up
that should
indirectly.
be
Like
that
it
should be
won't.
totally non-controversial.
Yeah, right. At this point, well, it's becoming more politically acceptable to criticize certain things. But
It has been a strange season, eh?
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's a
Yeah.
shifting of the seasons.
Yeah.
But definitely that's going to implicitly come up. Like we're not going to tackle it head on, but yeah, like I think people will understand how and why Zionism and Christian Zionism emerged in the way that it did, starting in the early 1830s, really, which will tie directly into this story, and will directly tie into the Whitechapel murders directly.
Wow.
Yeah, and things like the Isis Urania Temple, which plays a key role with the esoteric section of the Theosophists, and a certain research lodge, a Freemasonic research lodge called the Quatuor Coronati Lodge, which was overseen by the guy who became King Edward VII and his lieutenants, Sir Walter Besant, the brother-in-law of Annie Besant, who headed the Theosophists, and that was the treasurer, and Sir Charles Warren, who was the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, overseeing for the 2 years. And under his 2-year period, that was when the Jack the Ripper murders were happening, along with another guy named Sir Robert Anderson, from a certain sect that also generated Crowley and Darby. So yeah, that's going to be. We'll figure out a way to piece that together for the sequel.
The Theosophy and Blavatsky and like the revivalist movement and like Christianity in the 1800s in America. It comes up so much. I just keep the original projects that we've used. I just keep them at hand because I know we'll be copying and pasting it again into probably the next movie. They just keep popping up everywhere. There's so much more than it's played out to be in mainstream history. Is this quirky little occultist thing that maybe grabbed a few people here and there of note, and now, no, of course, it's just in the past and it doesn't mean anything anymore, and it's just turning out to be this, I don't want to say takeover of culture, but
yeah, you can say that. That's
okay.
what's happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
totally say that.
Wow.
There's another charming anarchist. It's a fun name. Notes that for what it may be worth, the Watchmen comic book features the adventures of Pym as an alternate plot. The movie version omits this side story. I forgot about that. I had read that comic book series years ago and forgot about that side plot. I got to revisit that because I guess that's a direct reference to
the narrative of Gordon M. Pym.
Yeah, I guess that would be it. Charming anarchist. Could you say a little bit more? Does that storyline directly reflect Poe's treatment of the narrative of Gordon Pym?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My understanding is that the whole premise of the Watchmen series was to present Poe's narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym.
That's what Alan Moore was doing, eh? Because Alan Moore's an interesting guy, right? Because he himself is a practicing occultist and druid. He seems to be pretty highly placed and vetted to be like a shaper of cultural feelings, like the zeitgeist. So he's bringing in very sophisticated concepts into his stories that most people don't know how to deal with. So I wonder what that. Yeah, I'm gonna look into this Charming Anarchist. That's a very interesting concept there. I never thought about.
Yeah, I myself, I have no idea if there's any profound significance other than maybe it's just a diversion, but there's belief that the underlying plot of The Watchmen is a modern version of the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym.
Can you pop a link in the chat, Charming Anarchist? It's Jason Dahl, by the way. That I can't find anything on Google about the Pym and the Watchmen.
I couldn't do that now. No.
At your leisure.
Yeah.
Kimberly writes, Deborah, I guess I missed something there, but he referenced Candace and her speaking about a book she's reading or has read. I believe it was The Secret Founding of America by Nicholas Hager. Yep, that's right. Hager was an MI6 asset. The book is pure MI6 propaganda. Correct. Yep. Yeah, that's the guy who was helping Candace rediscover her American roots as being a total Freemasonic fraud.
Huh.
So yeah, if people have any final thoughts or questions, now would be the time to toss it out there. Cool. Well, Dave, Cynthia, any final parting thoughts that you guys would want to toss out?
I mean, I think the I don't want to say the work is just beginning. The work better, most of the work better be over. But I think getting this out is the next phase. So you maybe make a few last touch-ups, but otherwise, yeah, just I think getting this out. My contention is that this can by far be one of the most successful audiovisual productions any of us have done, because Poe has such great name recognition. The Chinese place where I go to, the Chinese waiter, he saw I was reading Matt's book and I was still working on the script and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, Edgar Allan Poe." And he got all excited like a little kid. And he was saying like, "Yeah, we used to read, they taught us Edgar Allan Poe in high school." And he's like, "That's deep stuff." And he was he was marked by, what he had encountered with Poe, and that it was more profound than other things that he had encountered. And I feel there's a lot of that, right? So like Poe is really a great figure to then get into all these things and just open up a world of learning history, spiritual warfare, hypothesis formation. Like it's all there. Poe is truly a universal genius. So I think we picked a good figure, and this is the kind of figure that we want people to actually develop a real intellectual and creative and spiritual relationship with, right? Like a Beethoven, like a Schiller. So yeah, Poe has really been kind of, there's been 170-year ritual humiliation, which every year, you get the same kind of Halloween Poe stuff. So yeah, we're turning a chapter here. We're turning a page. And I think there's a lot of potential, and that will set a good standard for what we want to do to just introduce people to more kind of universal geniuses with this kind of approach that really brings history, art, aesthetics, spiritual warfare, everything into focus.
Yep.
I think that can be pretty big. You know, these documentaries, I think they'll take a life of their own.
Hmm. Well, David Lester also writes here a little question, which is a useful one to. I'll read it because it's useful. He says, "Do you guys happen to discuss any of these research ideas findings with the Society of Cincinnati, as it's apparently still active today? And two, what was when was the origin or the rationalization method versus the classic trivium?" What I'll just say about the Society of Cincinnati is it seems to be a bit of a basket case, lame duck these days. It doesn't, like all hereditary orders, when that's a fundamental feature of an organization, is the fact that only people who are the hereditary offspring of American revolutionary leaders are permitted to join. You always get corruption, elitism, and we were featuring some of the early healthy currents within that institution that did a lot of great good. But I would say it's really been infiltrated and turned into something that's probably not so great. So I wouldn't even know where the sane representatives are within that organization these days. Maybe we'll send them an email and see if we get a response to, but I don't even know. It seems like a lot of bad has been operating through that organization too. So that's just something to hold in mind. And the question for the origin of when was the origin or the rationalization method versus the classical trivium? I'm thinking you're talking about the perversion of education through I guess you're right. Maybe you could, David, could you describe that question a little bit more, how you're thinking about the rationalization method? I'm thinking the classical trivium you're thinking is healthy, like we think it's healthy, but.
Hey, Matt. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Absolutely. Hey, man.
Good that's going through. The point you were making with Poe is the epistemological warrior phrase that caught me. You used that, and that was the capacity to use different levels of logic with creative leaps, I suppose, in teaching people through the novel how to cognitively play with the level of different layers of factual interpretation, deduction, and formal logic, but not reduce it to sort of a very dry type of reasoning.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And that rationalization, that's obviously the word I'm trying to do. It went rationalization. Rationalization. There was a convention, not to put the other side of it, the Catholic tradition, but the trivium was the balance of the language arts, which was arts and sciences, grammar, dialectica, and rhetorica. And that was a method of understanding persuasion, which was rhetorica. Dialectica was the logical arts, and grammatica was interpretation. And these three were set in harmony. It's a methodological form of education that related to the liberal arts, the trivium versus the quadrivium, which were the mathematical and astronomy. So it was a kind of architecture treating the way of perceiving and designing concepts and formalizing the situational understanding of the contexts. All of these methods playing around with these different forms of judging and analyzing and interpreting. So this was sort of a meta skill set that was formed in the trivium as a training ground for effective leadership. You and I were kind of kicking back. I know you pushed back on Marshall McLuhan, but he wrote a book, his PhD, on the history of Thomas Nash, and he looked at the rise and fall of civilizations fighting between oral society, print, and electronic society, and the trivium was being forced in oral society with people like Cicero. So the classical arts were all fundamentally about the skill of rhetoric, which is oratory. And then with the rise of the printing press, everything became formalized, and therefore the functional and cognitive capability of writing was so important. And the PhD thesis related to a fellow named Thomas Nash, another fellow named Peter Ramis, which Walter Ong wrote his thesis on, which was the division between why and how in public education. Why was separated from how so that it didn't conflate people's ability to achieve anything. They wouldn't get too philosophical, let's say. So these were sort of very big ruptures in skill sets that was not transferred, to the public at large. This was more on the esoteric, or the exoteric versus esoteric. So that term that you're using to describe with Poe, I didn't hear that before, as a method of teaching in and of itself. And it sort of says, well, logic within creative leaps. So it's much more robust than that to look at the trivium as a method of teaching. For arts and sciences is interdependent. So arts would be perception, and concepts would be formal sciences. I don't want to talk too much more, but that just to introduce that. And there was a lot of people trying to, in homeschooling, Catholic education, and trivium is pretty much mainstay. Maybe somebody else wants to suggest that, but if this is about epistemological warrior in trying to get people to look at the creative imagination, and the oligarchy split between innovation and sort of extraction. I remember this quote by FDR saying that the old oligarchs just want to extract. It's the land and aristocracy and the renters. They don't have their skill sets in innovation, and thereby you have a cognitive split between the way that they're used to building wealth.
Right.
But in doing so, they would disempower people. I think even the English never learned how to, write, only to read at first. For example, they're always crippled in their cognitive abilities. And I'm just giving that little background as a curiosity to it. And thank you for talking about the Cincinnati, because, in theory, they could be sort of poked and prodded to say, hey, let's go back to your origins. Maybe like you're right. I'm not sure if you're just cynical that they don't, care anymore. I did see that the fact that you have to be hereditary to carry on the lineage, ironically, in this society, maybe that keep that integrity of the revolutionary.
I've seen no evidence that they've continued to do that they play a positive role in much these days. But maybe
you're right. But if you
with a good good intention that could be organized to look at for a second time at this thing that they thought they knew, maybe
because they might not even have that background like you offer. I mean,
well, what I'll say definitely about the severing of the how and the why, that's definitely something that was done by a major Rosicrucian operation around the figure of John Dee and his followers, especially Francis Bacon in his New Organum. And Francis Bacon was a correspondent with a figure in Venice called Paolo Sarpi through an intermediary named Bocciolini, who was part of Sarpi's Giovanni group, this faction that renovated the Venetian method to think more internationally and more subtly about no longer trying to defeat creative progress as it was expressed in the best of the Renaissance traditions, but rather try to co-opt it and redefine what education and arts and everything is around a severing of the how and the why. So that the whys are reserved for only the philosophers, but who have no practical skills, and those who will be used as technicians will memorize formulas. They will be the bean counters. That will be science, as Bacon notes in his Organum, for a period will have to be reserved only for the bean counters, and measuring cucumbers. So that's basically science will have to be reducible to something purely statistical, mathematical, something based on rote memory. but without any sense of metaphysics that's intelligible to reason. So the idea of first causes cannot be something that we permit into the educational experience. So you basically create human monkeys who get really good at making models, at describing things, at labeling things, putting like nominalisms, like putting labels onto things that then have some like mechanistic usefulness, but they're mentally in a cage because they don't believe that there's even a point of asking why. And that was done by design to impose this artificial sort of severing. And people like Poe and the people he was working with, like especially Charles Dupin, somebody who he admired greatly as a young genius, who I write about in volume 3 of the book. Charles Dupin was a young 20-something-year-old brilliant scientist from the École Polytechnique who was a prodigy of Gaspard Monge, who made massive discoveries on anti-Euclidean geometries. The guy was a statesman as well, like he was a fighter. And his method was used by Poe as his inspiration for the crafting of the character of Inspector Dupin. Later on, that I was blown away that Dupin was, and even still is recognized as such a pioneer in the field of anti-Euclidean geometries, that it seems were inspired by people like Gauss, that inspired the topographies of Bernard Riemann. So you've got this, like, what I can say about the quadrivium is that there's been a battle by these occultists to try to co-opt the idea of what the quadrivium was as developed by Plato, as you know, and Cicero himself, as Cynthia brought to my attention. She did a beautiful class on Cicero and Socrates' fight to revive, to basically battle tyranny in their own times. And when Cicero was pressed to define himself and what he was, are you an Epicurean or are you a Stoic? He would say, I'm neither. I'm a Platonist. So he directly situated himself in neither of those two schools, although he had allies who found themselves in both of those two dichotomized realms. He himself did not allow himself, he didn't play that game. And he directly was very explicit that it was Plato and Plato's method. He was a true Platonist. And then what you see, though, in the time that he is living, is you have these Neoplatonic occultists who represent everything Plato hated, who are trying to co-opt the name of Plato and his institutions, including his academy, and basically undo his quadrivium by mystifying it, bringing it into something that is devoid of bringing the human mind into true resonance with the universe. So when I look at like the real Platonists, and again, a big one I'll put in there would be Kepler. Like in Kepler's New Astronomy, where he discovers his harmonic third planetary law, he lays out like a real quadrivium education as his own method on a microcosm, making the discoveries he made. But then he's also calling for the reform he's trying to inspire leaders to reform education in a way that would help students all untap their musical scientific spirits. So, and that's very clearly defined, and he's very explicit. He's writing this book to King James of England, trying to bring out the better angels of James's nature, which he's incapable of doing because James is still being influenced too much by the John Dee and the Bacon figures. But you know, when you read Plato, you read the Timaeus, and you look at it from that standpoint, and then you read Kepler, and then you read Dupin, and you look at, there's something that's super healthy. And it always bears good fruit. And I need to, and so Dave, myself, Cynthia, we had the opportunity over the years to interact with the thoughts of Lyndon LaRouche, who very much gave us sort of a very interesting set of claims that we had to try to prove or disprove. And in the course of that journey, we found one of the pieces of advice that he put forth, which is the most useful, is read people who make discoveries and look at how they show you how their mind works. And for everybody else who has very influential opinions about things that maybe they're super well respected and influential, if they didn't make actual discoveries of universal principles, maybe take their theories about what is knowledge with a grain of salt. But for the people who actually made the discoveries of universal principles and have also opinions about what is knowledge, it probably carries more weight because they made the discoveries. They can prove it. And it's interesting because then you start finding certain common characteristics of these minds that are both aesthetically very well developed, but also rigorously also mature is in an incredible way. Super honest people, and very courageous.
Yes, if I may just to clarify, like the quadrivium and the trivium are two separates. The language arts were the trivium, and the mathematical or the analytical were the quadrivium. Music and astronomy and geometry. But the interesting too with McLuhan, he was a big fan of Poe. I don't know if you knew that, and he talked about the maelstrom in terms of your ability to cognitively navigate the whirlpool. He related to pattern recognition, but specifically to medium. So if I was to dare clarify something between, like, say, Socrates and Plato, Socrates often said, why the hell would you trust anyone that would write something down? You wouldn't have you'd have the knowledge, but not the experience. And of course, it took Plato to write down everything that Socrates said. So that's why we have anything Platonic is written, and therefore it has this sort of effect of being objective because it's filtered through language.
But it's not. But see, that's the thing. You're partially correct, but I would push back a little bit because the essence of Plato's method of writing is that it's all based on the ontological paradoxes. So if you're a literalist, you will never understand Plato. So if you're trying to literally understand Plato's mind by literally
certainly
reading
not
what he's saying,
not being literalist.
No, I'm not saying you per se. It's the royal you. I'm not saying you per se. But
why I can give you dozens of books that relate preface to Plato with Eric Havelock at Harvard. This is not just a nuance I'm trying to describe. It's based on the challenge of each medium fights each other, oral and print. It's like a metacognitive effect. That's why the medium is the message he's arguing.
I would just say,
sorry. Yeah.
I would just say that I mean, I think it's the question of method, though, right? Like, whatever medium you're using, you can approach it with a different method. And obviously, every medium has its own sort of particularities. You know, if you're going to, the way you're teaching or communicating, it's going to be different. But ultimately, what needs to be clear for people is the method which they're using to investigate and deal with any kind of question or paradox. Without that, you're going to have all sorts of different consequences and changes. Look at social media, right? That's a different medium, and But technology has really changed our culture. But without a clear sense of method, if you're going to give an oral presentation or if you're going to write something, you're going to have the same problems, right? The problems don't go away unless there is this deeper cultivation. And I think it's just important we want to make that, a conscious object, right? How do we develop a sense of method? Because then everything else will fall into place, right? Whatever medium we sort of have a certain savvy, whether it's writing. Some people are better at writing. Some people are better at speaking. Some people are better at music. Some people are better at acting. There are different mediums, right? But we want people to be able to think at the end of the day, because if they can't think, we can give them anything, right? Yeah, read this book and now you'll understand. And it could be the best book in the world, right? And the person comes out like totally with a bunch of crazy ideas because they have their own, they don't know what their method is, right? They're emoting with different things. They're not aware of their own biases, so they'll interpret certain things so you're always going to have the same problem unless there's a clear method. So that's why Poe's good, because there's an emphasis on method and interrogation and line of questioning. So I think that's crucial, right? We can figure everything else out, but if that's not clear to people, then we're always just kind of going to go in circles.
Yeah, and I don't want to take up too much time, but to clarify, like this we're talking on the Zoom is oral. It's an oral medium, but the base of it is electric. It allows us to put each other in the same space, in a kind of bizarre shared space. And this allows us to do an oral tradition again. So McLuhan and Walter Ong and a number of his people that studied this, we're looking at this as a rise of the new orality. So the method is different in oral culture than it is in print culture. And when you go print, then you'd have to have a much more rigorous, and you'd be reading, you know, the text much more than trying to defend it. So when you do your PhD and you do orals, right, you write your text and then you have to defend it through oral presentation too. So it tries to balance both the writing side and the orality in terms of the skill sets that you develop. So before writing, Socrates is, epitomized as the oral, and same Cicero when you're looking at, say, defending people in the legal area for property with Cicero. The great orators had to have a certain method. When you're writing, you have a different method. And I don't want to get into too much more because I appreciate, the audience generally has other questions, but I'm just trying to put this forward. McLuhan specifically looked at Poe and was very entranced with the metaphor of the maelstrom. And as a result, he said each medium has an ability to look at the pattern so you don't get swallowed up and go down, literally down the black hole, that you could navigate the pattern. So,
and that's a fair point. No, that your point is clear. That's Substack is its Substack is its own thing, right? The way people write on Substack is different from the way you write a book. It's different from, the most effective Substacks you're speaking, it's kind of like people are getting an email. So you're supposed to be speaking to them in a more kind of intimate or personal fashion. At least a lot of the Substacks with the most success, they have that. So there's a kind of personal medium. But yeah, it's clear.
Yes, just as putting it out there, and I appreciate the time to share that. I really enjoy your work, guys, and quite thankful
we'll
that
see you
you've
at
made
the
that effort.
Toronto showing.
Yes. All right. That's going to be cool.
I'm actually in Montreal. I'm a Laurentians. So I went down there because I was so enthusiastic to see you guys. So
wow, that's quite.
Imagine. I had other friends
in
Toronto, so I wasn't that much of a fanboy. But at least I can tell you that it was great to be there with you guys.
That's awesome, man. That's
Thanks.
cool.
Cheers.
John has a decent little question. He said, what was the origin of this line of research on Poe? In other words, what was the discovery that made you think I should look more into this? It's a good question, John. Poe has been close to my heart for a long time, and same thing as I mentioned in the opening remarks, Cynthia, Dave, myself, that was our first RTF, or one of our earliest RTF conferences, was on specifically the topic of Poe. And part of the reason was we had all engaged with, some years back, the writings of the figure Allan Salisbury, who we decided to make this film here in honor of, who was an associate. He passed away in 1993 or 92. But he was an associate of Lyndon LaRouche in the 70s and 80s. He made some of the biggest discoveries of he basically discovered this side of Poe that nobody ever picked up on before, and he wrote an essay in 1980 called "The Purloined Life of Poe," and he brought up a lot of this counterintelligence work that Poe was doing that really had us all just have a lot of fun rereading Poe's stories with this new appreciation and hypothesis in mind, and it's a fun voyage. And Salisbury was also the guy who was renowned for having discovered the American system of Henry C. Carey, of Clay, as an entire continuity of a science of economy, a science of happiness that was so causal in the shaping of the United States, though it had been almost completely forgotten and erased from collective memory, even by the 1970s. But he was the one who was able to piece this together early on in the 70s, which completely it's incredibly revolutionary what he was able to do with that. And again, he got cancer, he passed away, but his work lives on, and we've been just trying to, it's one of these gifts that keep on giving. Poe's work is so comprehensive, and the more you go back to it, the more discoveries you just find added onto this thing. And so Salisbury did that in that sense. And then I'll let Cynthia or Dave chime in if they've got their own thoughts and experience. But I'll say for this particular storyline here that we just experienced that's published in the book, the book itself was the outgrowth of a work on the the hidden hand behind UFOs. So that film series that we decided to do back in 2023, Cynthia was looking at my scripts because I'd been trying to work on a script on the story since 2021, and I was failing miserably. It was always very much rooted in, CIA espionage operations. And Cynthia finally got frustrated, and she's like, "Look, you're looking at it all wrong. You have to look at the ancient occult. You have to look at the mystery cults." And I was like, "Well, if you think you can do it, you try to write a script then." And she did write a script, and it became the script for episode 1 of The Hidden Hand Behind UFOs, which was perfect. That was the way to look at it, and it completely shifted my thinking and my research in many ways, and how I was thinking even about concepts that I had been holding in my mind and writing books about, like the Rhodes Scholarship and the Fabian Society. And I started revisiting what these even mean. What is transhumanism from this standpoint? What is this UFO operation to create a new set of religions from the standpoint of the mystery cults that have been religious engineering for a very long time? And then a lot more came into place and started fitting together. And the book series sort of emerged out of that. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I had to tackle a magic trick known as Nikola Tesla, because there were too many anomalies that didn't fit the big narrative of Tesla as the great, electric magician that we should all pay homage to and just be in awe of his grand genius. There was just too many anomalies pertaining to his relationship with ardent Satanists and hardcore fascists that were tied directly to Aleister Crowley and these hermetic networks. And somewhere along the way, the work on Poe just became a part of that journey that I realized I needed to devote a lot more time to filling out that story, because it fit right into what it was that people like Harry Houdini were at war with in trying to expose this occult infiltration of America as sort of the modern incarnation, the 20th century incarnation of Poe's spirit, which I think really Harry Houdini was, as a contemporary of Tesla and a real, again, an epistemological warrior. That Houdini became so much more than I ever realized. He even had, but he emulated his method off of Poe. He loved Poe so much that he bought Poe's personal desk at auction. That's what he did. All of his writings. He wrote many books, Houdini, and he was writing on Poe's desk. He was inspired by Poe's Maelzel's chess player. The Goldbug work on cryptography that Poe had done inspired Houdini. So, yeah, I mean, it just kind of fit. That's when it's like Dave or Cynthia, like whenever you do, they have their own experiences too. Whenever you just like kind of lean into the unknown with a solid hypothesis, things kind of fall into place in a fun way. And you just got to kind of be prepared to deal with the surprises that you encounter by scratching on what seems like just a little bit of silver in dirt. And you're like, oh shit, there's a lot more silver behind it. Let's keep on digging. And be ready for some surprises, and also be ready to shift your assumptions, because you can't go on the journey if we hold on to our assumptions of how we thought things were. We'll fall off the trail too easily. So you have to be kind of platonic in that idea of always holding your hypotheses not so tightly that a better hypothesis can't be discovered to explain a paradox along the way. Drew.
Oh, by the way, if you're ever going to do something on Metzel's chess player, I suggest we do the canon, the Beethoven canon,
Yep.
ta 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 ta,
Yep.
That would be a good preface.
It would. It's true.
Technically, shorts could be done on these things, right? Different Poe stories. We're going to make some shorts from the film, but yeah, like you could be interesting as well, right? Little 5-minute or less kind of pieces on Poe's stories, right? These things, especially once the Poe doc really starts to get out there, that might be a interesting way to just follow up and.
Mm-hmm. All right. right. I think we're probably, I imagine. Yeah. All right. I think we've done pretty well today. This was a fun little interactive Q&A session, guys. I really appreciate this. And one thing, I'll just throw this out there. We make movies, but movies also, we're not making money with these movies. So it's really requires fundraising. So if anybody has any ideas of helping us get more donors, get more funders so that we can make more of these films and help Jason and help David eat their noodles as they're creatively producing, then feel free to let us know how you guys can help out and come up with ideas, because we need ideas. So I'll just throw that out there, throw it into the zeitgeist. Cool. All right, so everybody, thank you so much. And this coming Sunday, just so you all know, we have Paul. I always mistake the Collins brothers. One of the two Collins brothers will be doing a class on the UFO PSYOP from a very unique angle. And I think that some of their work is going to play a role in our upcoming film. Yep. Jason, that's right. Phil Collins. Phil Collins and RTF. Yeah. Yeah, one of their newest theses that they're going to go through on Sunday at 2 p.m. is going to be featured in one of our upcoming films pertaining to the role of predictive programming in PSYOPs, especially on the ET front. So that'll be a fun one. So check that out, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great night.